These are 4 red-hot, current, active battle sites for Second Amendment, both now and in the future. We'll be covering what they are in this video, so guys, let's get into it. Number 1, what is a dangerous and unusual weapon? Yes, this one comes up because the United States Supreme Court basically said, look, if a weapon is dangerous and unusual, then the Second Amendment doesn't protect it. Okay, so what do you think the anti-gunners have been doing ever since that loophole was either created or resurrected? More on that in a moment. They've been saying that basically everything that they do not like is a dangerous and unusual weapon. Even and perhaps especially the AR-15, which is of course the most popular firearm in the United States, with well over 20 million in existence, and is the most commonly sold and bought firearm in the United States as well. Again, dangerous and unusual. That's conjunctive and, not disjunctive. Or, I know, 6th grade English class sometimes can actually help you out. The Supreme Court says it has to be dangerous and unusual, not or unusual. And of course, all firearms are intrinsically dangerous. It's not going to do any good to protect yourself if, God forbid, you ever need to use one if it's not dangerous. The question really deals with the unusual aspect. And there's really a lot more to this because there's a whole history of dangerous and unusual within the English common law and so forth. And that's really what the United States Supreme Court was hearkening back to. The only thing that they've really kind of definitively laid out, or I should say definitively hinted at as being dangerous or unusual, and don't hate me for this, I'm literally only the messenger, are machine guns. The United States Supreme Court has hinted in their written decisions about the fact that machine guns are probably dangerous and unusual. They haven't gone that far to say that, but they've really gone at least partway down that road of saying that. So what are the limits of dangerous and unusual? Does that extend to AR-15s? Does it extend to all centerfire semi-automatic rifles? What about handguns? Handguns, as we know, are responsible for well over 70% of the homicides where they are misused in the United States. So are handguns dangerous and unusual weapons? We know that handguns are not because they've been explicitly blessed by the United States Supreme Court in their 2022 Brune decision. So pretty much those have been put in the safe category, all right? We're going to be getting into magazines in a little bit. But you can see how dangerous and unusual weapons, massive legal battleground, because it can basically strip almost everything that isn't a handgun, because a handgun, it's about the only thing, and again, we're talking about your general purpose semi-automatic revolvers. They didn't go into any great detail, but they talked about basically those kind of categories. Everything else, some shade of up for grabs. And keep in mind, that bolt-action rifle, anti-gunners will someday, mark my words, call that a sniper rifle. Right. Almost nothing is safe. So keep that in mind. Hey, really quickly, 2 things. Number 1, if you're enjoying this video, of course, all the YouTube things, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Number 2, we've got a sponsor for this video, and that's my law firm. It takes me, I think, as you can guess, a fair amount of time to research for these videos, put them together, come and film them, all that kind of good stuff. Not to mention Derek, our brave videographer and editor, who is, of course, working full-time for the law firm to come in and do all that kind of good stuff as well. So something you can do if you're enjoying our legal education content is please consider giving our Google My Business page for the law firm a 5-star review. It's something that really helps out the practice, which at the end of the day allows me to come here and play internet lawyer for you. So it's absolutely free, takes a few moments. Just check it out in the pinned comment below. It's also in the description box. Follow the link. It asks you to rate us on 0 to 5 stars. Keep in mind, this is the internet. 3, 4 stars, kind of a failing grade. So if you felt like you get good, decent legal education content, please consider leaving a 5-star review. I appreciate it very, very much. Now back to the program. Battle number 2, accoutrements. Yeah, I know the word sounds a little, I don't know what, but that's because that is the word that is being used by legal scholars and in the battle lines in court to define what is protected by the Second Amendment. The anti-gunners are saying that the Second Amendment does not extend to accoutrements. An accoutrement would basically be some sort of accessory, for lack of a better way of putting it, that is not essential to the use of the weapon. Now, I'm adding the not essential part. They would just say look, if it's not the weapon, it's not protected by the Second Amendment. So what examples are we talking about? The biggest example, what we're talking about, are things like magazines. Are magazines protected by the Second Amendment? Because they are arguing, the anti-gunners are saying, look, you could just have, let's take a Glock 19. They say that you can operate that just as effectively with a 10-round magazine. And therefore, the so-called high-round magazines, i.e. the normal magazines that come, standard with it that hold 15, those are not protected by the Second Amendment. And I will, of course, point out that if their argument is correct, then you really don't need 10-round magazines either, because at the end of the day, you just need a magazine that holds one, because that's all you really need to operate the handgun. And I'm sure that they would not disagree with that. You can see where the accoutrements battle gets to. Right now, we're basically focusing this on the magazine issues of magazine cutoffs. But if the magazine issue is lost, and someday it might move to this regardless, but if the magazine fight is lost in the United States Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court does hold that, look, accessories are not protected, or if they issue a very narrow decision that only affects magazines for handguns or rifles or both, then again, you're going to see other so-called accessories and accoutrements such as scopes, stocks, slings, who knows. All of these other things could also be ruled as, hey, states and the federal government can ban these because they're not protected by the Second Amendment. Yeah, you can have a right to your bolt-action rifle, your Remington 700, your Winchester Model 70, or whatever else it is, but you sure as heck cannot have a scope on that. That turns it into a deadly sniper rifle, and no one needs that, right? The arguments write themselves because unfortunately we've seen them written so many times for so many other things. Number 3, sensitive places. No, we're not talking about that game that your uncle wanted to play with you while camping. A little dark, but we're talking about where can you carry firearms. This is a massive issue. So certain anti-gun states have tried to flip this from a, look, all private property starts off as being illegal unless you post and say you cannot carry into my store, into my whatever. That's the way it defaults works for the Second Amendment. And by the way, just for rights in general, more on that in a second. Anti-gun states are trying to flip this on its head and saying you cannot carry a firearm anywhere in public or on private property unless it is posted as being 2A legal. So instead of posting, I don't want guns here, which you have a right to do for private property, they're trying to say that you actually have to post to allow firearms there. That's a huge, huge, huge deal because it basically takes concealed carry, open carry, and it just stomps it into the ground. So that's one issue for sensitive places. The second issue for sensitive places is, of course, where can you say is a sensitive place? The reason why we're talking about this is because the United States Supreme Court has already ruled that sensitive places is a valid conversation point. They have already said, and we've covered extensively elsewhere, but they've already said that, look, certain places, such as polling places, such as schools, such as places where their terminology, not mine, but you are at the heartland, the provenance of government function. These are valid places for the government to ban carry. Well, keep in mind, what did New York City try to do after this? They tried to declare that the entire island of Manhattan is a sensitive place. So where can the government shut down carry is the second aspect of it. So in short, two sides to sensitive carry. One, where can the government declare and decide are specific prohibited sensitive places where they can rule by law and by statute you cannot carry? Does that extend to library, bus stops, public transportation? Does it extend to hospitals, to, well, we already have post offices, but will that stand? And you can kind of see where this goes, right? Stadiums, grocery stores, so on. The second aspect then is, can the government prohibit carry without signage on private property? Sensitive places, sensitive locations, big battleground. Number 4, who can own a gun? And by own a gun, we're not only talking about actually being in possession of it, but we mean purchase, we mean transport, we mean all those sorts of things. Are we talking about the fact that adults under the age of 21, so 18 to 21-year-olds, can they buy handguns from FFLs? Can they carry a firearm with a concealed carry license? Because federal and different state laws, depending on where you are, may prohibit one or both of those. you can see the issue. What about if you've been convicted of a nonviolent felony? Does that mean that you can now own and purchase and possess a firearm? So you can see how these are going to be big deals on the horizon, because who are the people when it says that, by it, of course, I'm talking about the Second Amendment, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Who are the people in the Second Amendment? Who is that referring to? Because keep in mind, if you're an anti-gunner, for decades, you've been arguing that the people just means the government, because that's what they thought when they said that only the government can own firearms, only the government, such as National Guard, only the military, only law enforcement, only the government can own firearms. Apparently, the people means exclusively the government under that confines. So who can own guns is going to be a big deal. Who are fundamentally, what is the definition of the people? That is going to be a massive battleground issue as we move forward. So I could have made a list that went through like a dozen or more things, but I wanted to keep it short and I went to 4. What would be your 5th, 6th, 7th? What would be your other issues? How would you rank the ones that I covered as well? Let me know down in the discussion in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit that like button. Now let's close with our ever popular quote of the day. This one comes from one of the all-time greats, Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who said, quote, "Very little is needed to make life happy. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Keep in mind, things that happen externally, you're the one that controls how you react to it. You may not be able to control what other people say or do, but you're the one that controls how you react to it. Remember that and find peace and power. We appreciate you sticking around. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, please feel free to check out some of our other great content, and we'll see you in the next one.